Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here and, of course, 4Ks. And today I've got a small roundup of 4Ks. I think these are... We got a couple Sony titles. That's Warner Brothers and then Sony. So mostly Sony to talk about. But some fun stuff and some good stuff. And we'll start with the best stuff, and that is Lady from Shanghai, Orson Welles, on 4K, and it does not disappoint. I'm not going to bury the lead on this one. This is, I think, a pretty nice step up from the many Blu-ray releases that this film has had. And there are a lot. It's Indicator and like Sony put it out through, I feel like Mill Creek, and then Kino put it out, and there'll be some things you'll want to hold on to your Kino Blu-ray for, but I'll get to in a little bit. But this 4K master, I don't think it's a new remaster, but this existing 4K master, I think from 2015, really does the job well. There's just a beautiful amount of detail and sharpness, and in terms of contrast, I definitely can see an increased amount of that. Blacks are blacker. It really looks great, and so I didn't want to bury the lead on that. If you feel like you want to pick this up, I think you should, because it's definitely a great release. Now, in terms of the movie itself, how do they sell it here? Baffling murders, fascinating plot twists, and remarkable camera work all contribute to this spellbinding, time-honored film noir written, directed, and starring Orson Welles. Hired to work on a yacht belonging to the disabled husband of a femme fatale, Elsa Bannister, Rita Hayworth, his Orson Welles' I guess estranged wife at the time. I think they were still married, but they were definitely not in great shape in terms of the marriage, but I guess they were friendly enough that they could work together, and it's pretty remarkable that two people that are definitely not in love with each other at the time of this filming can give off such chemistry, and that Rita Hayworth can really deliver, I think, one of her better performances, maybe really top shelf stuff. And I'd kind of forgotten how good she is in this as the femme fatale. I guess I'm used to sort of different, maybe a little bit fluffier roles for her, and she really packs a wallop in this. Let's see here. Michael O'Hara Wells is an innocent man drawn into a dangerous web of intrigue and murder. The subject of great controversy and scandal upon its initial release, The Lady from Shanghai shocked 1948 audiences, presenting Hayworth with her flaming red hair cut short and dyed champagne blonde. I guess Wells did that and really ticked off Harry Cohn in a big way. So I think he called for more close-ups, which I don't know if Wells would have done, but he's doing such a good job directing the movie that, even inserting close-ups that he wouldn't want, he nails it. And Charles Lawton Jr. shot the film. I think although I've seen a few cinematographers listed, but I think he's the primary DP on this, and it's just really great stuff. I mean, probably the best movie he ever shot, and he did some interesting stuff. Charles Lawton Jr. was a real, he's no Greg Toland, but he was a real workman, and he did things like 3:10 to Yuma, and he did westerns. Like he worked with Bedecker a lot. He shot Ride Lonesome, Tall T, Comanche Station, and then with John Ford, he shot Two Rode Together, and so he is one of those guys that I think is a little underrated based on how great this looks, but again, he doesn't have quite the Toland eye. Lady from Shanghai is now considered vintage Wells, with his famous Hall of Mirrors climax hailed as one of the greatest scenes in cinematic history. And I agree. It is a really great scene. It is often copied but not equaled. But there are some other things about the movie, and not to spoil anything, but in terms of the scenes that stand out, there's some other stuff in here. Some other sequences that aren't, while they're not as memorable as that sequence, which is truly spectacular and looks great on this 4K. There are some other sequences in this movie that will, I think, stand out if you haven't seen it in a little while. There's just, it's just a meticulously crafted film, and the performances are great. I mean, Wells's Irish accent, maybe not my favorite part of it, but ultimately it doesn't detract enough from the other stuff that's going on. But there's this sexually charged sort of meet at an aquarium. There is a trial scene that is a little strange. There is a sort of a chase escape thing through the San Francisco streets that is pretty cool. And again, all this is so well shot that I think it just really delivers. And anyway, it's a really great noir story. The idea is that Wells plays a sailor, I believe, who saves this woman, Rita Hayworth, in the park, and ends up, through her gratitude, getting invited onto her husband's boat. And her husband is this tycoon, and immediately there's tension there, but she's clearly bored, and probably not the first time that she's done something like this. But it is like I said, it's one of the great Rita Hayworth performances, despite having been handicapped by her hair, if you will. But yeah, it's just really, it's top tier stuff. I mean, you talk about Citizen Kane, obviously, but the progression that we're talking about here, he goes from Citizen Kane to Magnificent Ambersons. I think those are both Toland. And then he does The Stranger, and obviously has studio issues with Ambersons, but he's not fully given creative control as he was with Kane until Lady from Shanghai, and I'm kind of surprised he was able to get it, but it definitely shows in terms of the ambition of the production and what he's able to pull off. Yeah, just a classic with a lot of classic moments and some really good performances, and a beautiful looking 4K. That's one thing I just want to highlight, is it's just really great in terms of that. Now, in terms of the extras, there's a couple things that are ported over, and I can't remember where this one originates, but there's an audio commentary by filmmaker Peter Bogdanovich, and of course of long time friendship with Orson Welles, loved Welles, talked about him constantly, imitated him constantly. The guy lived with him, the guy Welles lived at Bogdanovich's house, so I can't imagine the amount of stories he must have had. You get a little sense of that in the podcast that One Handshake Away, that he started, and then his ex-wife, I guess, sort of takes over doing after his passing. But you can get a sense that there were some stories there, definitely. So the commentary is just all about Orson Welles, and Bogdanovich goes into some stories and conversations that he had with Wells about this film, about Rita Hayworth, about Harry Cohn, and thematic stuff. It's a good track. I mean, he's probably better suited than almost anybody to talk about this movie in that sense because of his personal history. But I will say there is an audio commentary and featurette with Eddie Muller that were part of, I believe, the Kino Blu-ray that are not part of this release. And that's a bummer because Eddie Muller is definitely next in line as a commentator that I love to hear talk about this kind of stuff. And to hear him talk about a big movie like this, he's got a lot of deep cuts in the noir world, and he's turned me on to a lot of stuff that I never would have heard of because of his Noir Fest choices. But I do like to hear him talk about the heavy hitters too, and I remember digging that track. So it's sad that it's not here. It means if you want it, you got to kind of hang on to that disc. This also includes a conversation with Bogdanovich. It's SD, so I think both of these might be coming from DVDs. I'm not sure where they originate, but it's from 2000, and he's talking about the Wells-Hayworth marriage, the troubled production history. He sort of talks about various specific scenes and the stylistic approach and stuff like that. It's good. I can't remember how much overlap there is between the commentary and the conversation, but it's solid. And then the trailer is there as well. But yeah, like I said, definitely worth picking up if you're a fan of Wells, if you're a fan of noir, if you're a fan of good-looking black and white 4Ks. It falls into all those categories. Okay, we're going to shift gears pretty hard right now, and we will talk about Game Night. This is the film from 2018, and it was written, I believe, and directed by John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein, who have become a real force in studio, like big budgeted studio comedies, which is something that I thought we were kind of going to lose. Like I thought they were kind of going to go away. But then, they recently did Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, which was, I think, both a commercial and critical success. And I think a lot of people really dug that movie, and I'm one of them. And I will say I give it the edge over Game Night, which I think is fun. And I'll get into that too. But obviously they did the Vacation remake in 2015. I just love that John Francis Daley, Sam Weir from Freaks and Geeks, I'm sure, he probably doesn't want to focus on that as much anymore because obviously he's an incredibly creative guy, writing and directing. I mean, that's really admirable. And I can't think of too many child actors that not only succeed in the acting world as adults, but make the jump to directing and writing and succeed on the level that he has. So that's pretty remarkable. And as a longtime Freaks and Geeks fan, I couldn't be happier for him. And I couldn't be happier that the movies are pretty fun. So Game Night is a really... It gets pretty big, and I forgot how big it gets. But I digress. I like game movies. Movies wherein the characters have some game that they're playing or that they're a part of or that they've been slotted into. And watching Game Night made me want to go back and revisit some of my favorites, like, Fincher's The Game, which is one of the great game movies of all time. And that still really holds up, by the way. Really needs a 4K too, by the way, also. But, Midnight Madness, Tag the Assassination Game, Scavenger Hunt. A lot of them are kind of clunky comedies. And this is a pretty sharply written action comedy. And it's pretty enjoyable stuff with a really strong ensemble cast led by Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams, who play this couple. We see their meet cute at a trivia night at a bar, and how they get together, and then they have a bunch of friends that play with them, including some folks that I'm familiar with, like Lamorne Morris, who was he on New Girl? I think that's what I remember him from, but he's in tons of movies as well. Great actor and very funny, and yeah, he's wonderful in this. Kyle Chandler plays Jason Bateman's older brother, who's like more successful, and Bateman and Rachel McAdams are actually having trouble having a baby, and she's concerned that it might be, or their doctor is concerned it might be psychological, and that the brother is actually kind of part of this psychological problem he's having. That's like one of the things. But the more fun stuff is they have this game night with some friends, and they have a neighbor played wonderfully by Jesse Plemons, who's a cop. And they are trying to hide the fact that they're having this game night because he was married to a girl that they liked that was part of their group, and then they got divorced. And I guess she moved away. Like, I forget why she's not involved in game night anymore. But they don't want to let on. They never really liked him, and he's very awkward. He has a little dog, and he's well-spoken and articulate, but he's also kind of creepy. And so it's one of those things where you get why they don't want him involved. So they have to hide it. And on the night they're having one of their game nights, his brother comes by and everybody else sneaks in the back. And so they actually sneak in the windows of the house, which I think is super funny. And Kyle Chandler pulls up in a Stingray Corvette, which is actually Jason Bateman's character's like dream car. Just really messing with him, just always messing with him. And he has come up with it. Well, they have one game night. Is it the same? I think there's two game nights we're talking about. Anyway, he has an idea for a game night, and it's going to be this mystery thing. And it kind of goes awry very quickly when what are supposed to be the, I guess, kidnappers, there's going to be a kidnapping and there's going to be clue following, kind of like Midnight Madness, actually. Not the kidnapping, but the clue following. And turns out there are some real kidnappers that take his brother, but they think it's a joke, which is all very funny, that they're always thinking that it's a game when it's actually really happening. So their brother really gets kidnapped, and he's involved in some tricky business, we'll say. And then it becomes a sort of a mission to find him, and then eventually they start to figure out it's real, and then the stakes are heightened and it gets crazier and crazier. But Bateman is in rare form, very, very funny in this, and Rachel McAdams plays off him very well, and the whole cast is well placed in terms of the comedy, but it's about the writing. It's a really well done script in terms of the couple dynamics, and there's one character, this sort of a himbo type dude, kind of a hunky dude that always brings a less than intelligent hot girl to the thing. On this particular game night, he's chosen wisely, and he's brought Sharon Horgan is her name, and she's British and she's very smart, and she's like constantly making fun of him. Anyway, I love the dynamics of it. I love where it goes. I love the elevation. I like kind of the ending. It's goofy stuff, but it's very fun. Now, in terms of features, I don't think it has any. Or does it maybe have like a short? Oh yeah, an unforgettable evening making game night, and a gag reel. I think the making of is relatively short, but and a little fluffy, but it looks very nice in 4K. It's a 2018 film, and I should mention that this lady from Shanghai includes HDR, and you can definitely tell. And this one, I don't know about HDR 4K experience. I know it looked good. Dolby Vision, but I can't tell if there's HDR. But anyway, nice looking, and comedies, it's like, do you need a 4K of it? Maybe, but this is an action comedy, so I think it helps to have it elevated with a 4K, and, fun stuff if you haven't seen it at all, if you haven't seen it recently. Next up, we're going to throw back to the 90s. Actually, is this from 2000? No, 98, my bad. Can't Hardly Wait, directed by Deborah Kaplan and Harry Elfont. And they would go on to do the wonderful Josie and the Pussycats, which finally got a Blu-ray relatively recently. Took a little too long as far as I'm concerned. That movie is a pretty brilliant satire that's been now I think is appreciated. And even I, at the time it came out, didn't fully appreciate the satirical levels that they're going for and that they achieve in that film. Very funny. Anyway, this is their, breakout hit, and it has a remarkable ensemble cast, a lot of TV actors, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Lauren Ambrose, Seth Green, Peter Facinelli, Ethan Embry, Charlie Korsmo, who some would remember from Dick Tracy. That was his big kid role, and he's played sort of the nerd in this one. And of course, Ethan Embry's character is obsessed with Jennifer Love Hewitt. She plays Amanda Beckett. She's been dating Mike Dexter. That's Peter Facinelli. And they've just broken up because he and his buds have decided they're going off to college and it's time to break up with their girlfriends. And Mike does it and they don't. And so Ethan Embry sees it as his opportunity to come in and try to woo his longtime crush. But he's got a friend played by Lauren Ambrose, who Denise Fleming, who I think she has kind of a crush on him, but he obviously is way into Amanda Beckett, and so she's kind of sick of all that. But she's very smart. She's, I like her a lot. She was great in 6 Feet Under, and she's very fun in this. She has an old friend played by Seth Green, Kenny Fisher, who's now just kind of in this weird place of really accentuating his personality, just sort of a hip-hop personality, and he's just all about trying to get laid, and it's pretty goofy. When you watch him, he's pretty laughable, but there are some moments where he pulls that down, and there's one particular great scene where they get locked, Lauren Ambrose and he get locked in a bathroom together, and suddenly he brings that down, and you get to hear a little bit about their history. But it's got a lot of energy. It's like it's graduation day at Huntington Hills High, and you know what that means. Time to party, and not just any party either. This is one of those, will be a night to remember as the nerds become studs, the jocks are humiliated, and freshman crushes blossom into grown-up romance kind of parties. One Crazy Night movies, I love those. And this was a lot of fun at the time that it came out in 98, and was a throwback to sort of 80s comedies, One Crazy Nights of the 80s, and I enjoyed it very much at the time, and saw it in the theater, I remember. But this one has had a nice history with, and the 4K looks nice. This does have HDR, and it's a very colorful film in terms of the costuming, in terms of the sets. There's some funny running jokes. Anyway, it looks like all the features from the previous anniversary edition are here, I think. 10 alternate and deleted scenes, Huntington Hills High Class of 98 reunion, Can't Hardly Wait, Making of a Teen Classic. That's a nice, mini doc. 6 archival deleted scenes, The Life of the Party featurette, commentary by filmmakers and cast 10 years later, and then the original commentary and filmmakers with filmmakers and cast. So you have 2, which is neat because you have sort of a looking back versus, at the time kind of commentary. I like that they have both of those. Can't Get Enough of You Baby by Smash Mouth music video. Those are fun too. Dolby Atmos Dolby Vision. Yeah, and so good sound and yeah, just very nice presentation. And if you're a fan of it, and it is something of a classic now, I think, definitely worth grabbing. Can't hardly wait on 4K. And then lastly, we have an interesting one. We have a concert movie, Richard Pryor Live on the Sunset Strip. This is from 1982, and it's apparently from an infamous night, June 9th, 1980, that he talks about when he caught on fire. I don't know if it was the freebasing cocaine thing, but it's sort of like his first big concert after that incident, and so it's really impactful to hear him start. He's one of the funniest humans to ever live, and I'm a big fan of him. This was shot by Haskell Wexler, I think, so it looks good, and the 4K looks nice. It's just mostly a stage. I don't think they do a lot with gelled lighting, but he's got a nice red suit on that pops in the 4K. But it's good to have Haskell Wexler shooting your concert doc. But anyway, it's a good stand-up performance, and it feels like he's a little awkward when he starts, like getting going. But then he's incredibly funny in so many instances. And as I said, he does talk about this, the drugs, the addiction. He's able to make that funny, which I think is really remarkable. I would think that would have been incredibly difficult to talk about and to make funny, but he does a wonderful job with it. Yeah, it's just it's ultimately a moving performance because he's clearly, it feels like he was there maybe there was a little insecurity with coming back after that and talking about this big incident in his life, but the crowd is incredibly warm and generous, and he's just really funny, and so it's one that I think I had seen, gosh, I don't know, maybe on VHS years and years ago, and I didn't remember almost any of it. There's tons of great bits in here. He has one bit particularly about cheetahs and how long they wait to go after their prey because they're so fast, and sort of the chit chat the cheetahs are having right before they go, because he was in Africa, and there's some great stuff there as well in terms of his Africa trip. But yeah, really neat to see him, open up and examine his life in that way. And it's not a downer. He's, like I said, he's able to make it, it's obviously a humbling experience, but he's really able to make it so much his own, and it really owns it, I guess is what I mean. And I really enjoyed seeing that. It's a beautiful thing to see somebody really put themselves out there in a way and see the audience respond. And I would imagine that the catharsis from this performance was a big, big deal to him. And it was sort of like let me put this behind me. I'll talk about it, and then I'll feel better. And I would hope he would have. But yeah, again, one of the funniest comedians ever, and no surprise that he was also very good in films, also very funny in films, sort of a natural actor, just a natural performer. And you can see why he was so influential to people like Eddie Murphy, and just tons of comedians cite him as one of the greats. And the way that he is so relaxed on stage, and the way that he finds his way to the jokes so casually, I found really enjoyable to watch. Just really solid stuff. Anyway, the 4K looks very nice. Again, having a great cinematographer shooting it definitely makes for a nice looking presentation. This has HDR and Dolby Vision. No features, really, just the trailer, unfortunately. But if you're a fan of Richard Pryor, if you like stand-up performances, this looks really nice. So definitely one that you could consider grabbing. Richard Pryor, Live on the Sunset Strip, 4K. Anyway, so that will do it for this performance. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.